This is going to be 2 days.
I wanted to make a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
Now we got to play the part.
Dick.
Dickie do.
What's the night of the?
14th.
No,
Yeah.
it's tonight.
No, it's,
A week
Dean
from
would
tonight.
not.
Call to order. The first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Richardson?
Here.
Max Bauer?
Here.
Lemkool?
Here.
Inman?
Here.
Henschel?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Here.
Fleece?
Present.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am. That takes care of that. The next order of business will be the approval of the minutes of August 3rd as provided in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, supported by Inman to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. There will be 2 opportunities this evening. If there are items on the agenda that you want to speak to, I will give you an opportunity to speak to those during the discussion of that agenda item. Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak on anything else? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Special order of business, the first opportunity is the...
We need approval of the agenda.
Oh, approval of the agenda. I'm going to get this thing done. I got work to do. I've been here. Larry.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the addition of the Mental Health Court Pilot Program Grant Continuation Memo dated September 2nd.
That'd be under new business.
And you can put that under new business. It's fine.
Okay. Mental health court will be added under new business. We have a motion by Inman, supported by Fleece, to approve the amended agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, the special order of business is to celebrate the recovery proclamation. Greg Stone is here, would like to speak a moment to that event. So, Greg, if you'll come up to the microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the commissioners. It's truly an honor to be here. And I also want to thank your staff for, it really made this process easy of submitting the proclamation for your consideration. And it's nice to know that when we call down here, there are people who are really public servants that take care of you. So I want to thank them. My name is Greg. I'm an addict. 24 years clean and sober, and I am the director of Stone's House, which is a nonprofit organization created in honor of my father, Marvin Stone. My dad worked in treatment and was in recovery all over this country. Was very instrumental in starting Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Cleveland, Ohio, and Miami, Florida, and actually worked in the Miami-Dade County Drug Offender Program, which was just the predecessor of what drug courts became to be. He really was a beacon light for many, many people, many ships lost at sea, and one of those ships was me. So it really is an honor and a privilege to accept this proclamation. And I accept this proclamation not just as director of Stone's House, but also for all the treatment and mental health providers in our community. There are countless that are dedicated and do their work every single day to help those folks that are in need. And obviously, you know the needs of many of those people because you deal with all the different facilities that have to help them or incarcerate them sometimes. I also accept this proclamation for all the thousands of individuals and families in our community who have found forgiveness and healing as a result of the recovery process. But I mostly accept this proclamation for those who are still suffering an active addiction. And as you can go anywhere in our community and there are people suffering, children suffering, people on the streets suffering because of the disease of addiction. And I want to let them know that there is help and there is hope. Okay? I've recently been having discussions with Ken Homer from Third Level Crisis, Pat Nestor from the Munson Alcohol Treatment Unit, Brad Wills from Community Mental Health, Sergeant Joe McCarthy from the Traverse City Police Department about creating a house that would be an alternative or an in-between if the detox beds at Dukoski Hall are full and someone or they can't go anywhere because of whatever reason, they've been denied services for existing agencies, rather than the emergency room or the psychiatric ward or the jail, that we would be there to help some of these people. There's services like that in many communities, and we need something like that in our community also. When doors close, people die, and that can't be tolerated in our community. When doors close, people die. And I have found, just like when I go to 12-step meetings, no one ever says, sorry, you can't come here. Okay? No, sorry, you used too many times, you can't come back here. Okay? And sometimes those kind of things happen in our community. So anyway, it's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I thank you all very much. Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Lemkool, supported by Thomas, to approve the proclamation declaring September 2011 as National Recovery Month. Any further discussion? Jason?
I hate to be a buzzkill.
Okay.
Language means something to me. And when I see a line, whereas individuals should have access to fully participate in community life, including economic advancement and prosperity, fair and decent housing, quality education, positive opportunities, to benefit and contribute to material, culture, and social progress, I'm saying we have the right to those things. Now, in some cases, some of that, we have a right to the opportunities to those, but I don't agree with we have the right to access those. It might seem like parsing an idea a little bit to the nth degree, but it's critical that we understand the language that we use when we present something from the board, for example. The other thing that I have a problem with is referencing and legitimizing the Affordable Care Act, which again is subject to it's going to go to the Supreme Court. It's probably not going to stand, and it's going to be nullified, and in all likelihood. And again, I disagree with it. I cannot support this, not because I don't believe that people should try to better their lives or seek mental health options where available, but I don't believe in qualifying certain things as rights where they're not, and I don't believe in legitimizing, at least from where I sit, things that I strongly disagree with. And so there's that anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Bonnie.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Gilman?
No.
Fleece?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am. The proclamation will stand. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to the consent calendar. And Bonnie, will you read the consent calendar, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Commission on Aging Monthly Report. Number 2, Veteran Services Quarterly Report. B, approve. Number 1, Secondary Road 2012 Grant Application, Sheriff's Department. Number 2, OHSP Traffic Endorsement Grant, Fiscal Year 2012, Sheriff's Department. Number 3, Property Room Surplus, Sheriff's Department. Number 4, Counseling Services Agreement Renewal, Health Department. Number 5, Medical Director Services Agreement Renewal, Health Department. Number 6, Fiscal Year 2011 Emergency Management Performance Grant.
Having heard the consent calendar, is there anyone in the audience wishing to have any of these items removed? Seeing none, is there any that the board wishes to remove? Jason?
Number 2, please.
B2?
B2.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of B2. Support.
Motion by Inman, supported by Richardson, to approve the consent calendar as amended. Roll call, please.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am. This brings us to the sheriff's office.
Mr. Chairman, will you handle the one that we pulled from the consent calendar now?
Rather than make them
You want to do that, or you want to do it with unfinished business?
Well, only because they're here.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
All right, before we start the discussion about the community police officers, if we could address the Office of Highway Safety Program as Commissioner Gilman had asked for.
Very well.
And also, I would like to mention that Wayne Clatter is also asked to speak in regard to the community police officer contracts.
Very well.
Go ahead.
Okay. In 1985, the state of Michigan passed the Seatbelt Act in its first inception. And at that time, of course, it was set up so that it was a secondary infraction. It was a limited amount. The fine was a limited amount, and it was pretty non-consequential. And it was essentially set up for the most part by the insurance companies. Now, part of the planning since then, and part of the changes since then, was a particular part of the law, MCL 257.71 710E, and Section 6 in that, it says, if after December 31st, 2005, the Office of Highway and Safety Planning certifies that there has been less than 80% compliance with the safety belt requirements of this section during the preceding year, enforcement of this section by state and local law enforcement agencies shall be accomplished only as a secondary action when an operator of a motor vehicle has been detained for a suspected violation of another section of this Act. What that was, this is actually in response to the changes in the law that allowed a seatbelt infraction to be a reason to pull over a citizen. Now, in 1990, there was a case where at Saginaw, the Saginaw Sheriff's Department, they set up some sting operations. That these essentially what this grant is for. It was challenged in court. They won it in Michigan, and the Attorney General at the time, Frank Kelly, took it all the way to the Supreme Court ultimately. And the Supreme Court ruled that it was not a violation of the Fourth Amendment rights to do such a thing. So the Supreme Court has ruled that it was fully constitutional. Well, I'm one of those people that tend to disagree with such a thing, and though I can't change that particular ruling and I can't change the law necessarily at this point, I can certainly do my part to not help in what I view as an unconstitutional activity in our county. I think that, I have some questions other than the simple $12,000 that's provided for the for this particular function, but I don't believe. I'm sorry. Oh, I don't believe in the process of setting up checkpoints, inconveniencing travelers, tourists, and our locals alike. And I think that there's a fine line between well, I don't know, fine line. I think a good policing structure is going to be able to deal with such a thing without having to stop and be able to inspect everybody going through, even if it's a random location. It's a little too, jackbooted to me, I guess, is the way I look at it. I'm a strong believer in the Constitution. I believe that the Fourth Amendment has been abrogated with the ruling that Rehnquist, a conservative guy, passed down, but I think that they used so many precedents, it was like a game of postman gone bad. By the time it got to them, there were about 6 or 7 laws that were one after another was based on, and in 1990, the particular case, in fact, was the Department of State Police versus SITS, if anybody's interested in that. In any event, other than that, I have one question. The $12,000 grant, which, by the way, we all pay, we can say, well, it's free money, but we all pay in some way, shape, or form. It is taxpayers that pay for it. Is that $12,000 grant, does that cover all of the activities, or is it merely a part of what you do? Is there an accounting that shows it?
Yes.
Yes.
It does not cover every expense. In fact, it covers personnel expenditures based on what the officer's rate of pay is, their fringes. We are allowed by the grant to use a certain percentage for gas and equipment as well as administrative oversight. We have an account set up through finance that tracks that via expenditure status report, and that is submitted to the state of Michigan on a quarterly basis. Nowhere, it does not at all cover all costs.
Okay, so we do bear your department at least bears an expense beyond
certainly
that.
Overtime over and above the enforcement zone itself, including holdover outside of the enforcement zone, court, if the citation is challenged through court, if there's an arrest for a misdemeanor or anything outside of what that zone was intended for, the cost of that is borne by the county.
Now, does the non-participation in this particular program, does that affect any other grants or funding that you receive from the federal government or the state?
Not that we've heard of as of yet. This grant started out in 2004 with about $30,000, and now it's down to $12,000. So I don't know, Commissioner Gilman, if we do not participate this year, if we'll be available for funding for next year. The situation with this grant, and you're very well aware of this, obviously, is that we're well over 90%, 95% compliant in the seatbelt zones. This grant also entails alcohol enforcement, which is the larger share of that. And it also allows us to buy car seats, which I believe are also very important aspects of responsible policing. The seatbelt zones, who knows what's going to happen with those in the future. I may share some of your opinions about that. It's a 97% compliant rate right now. How much can you beat a dead horse? But that is a portion of that grant, and it's less than, it's a third of the grant, actually. So,
Thank you.
did I answer all
I
your
think you did,
questions, sir?
yes.
Okay.
I think the way that is broken down is $4,000 for seatbelt, $8,000 for drunk drive. And when they set up one of these seatbelt zones, they have to place a huge orange sign that says, "Seatbelt enforcement zone ahead." They have to put that out there. So people know, unless they can't read or they can't see, that if they keep driving in this direction, there's going to be cars there with their flashing lights on, looking for seatbelt people. That the people aren't wearing their
It's
seatbelts.
interesting.
So, you know, how much of a violation of their rights is that? I mean, it's like, they have to put those up. You can't just go out there and have somebody in an unmarked car, an officer hiding behind a tree and, you know, camouflage, looking for these people.
Too bad you can't do
So-
it for cell phones.
Pardon?
Too bad you can't do it for cell phones.
Well, maybe that'll be next, but.
I move that the Board of
so-
Commissioners approve the submission of the grant application to the Office of Highway Safety Planning of the Michigan State Police for $12,000 for traffic safety enforcement.
Support.
Okay, motion by Richardson, second by Fleece. All those, discussion. Chris?
Yes. Sheriff, please tell me, you don't put up a sign when you're looking for an impaired driver saying, you know, impaired driver zone ahead, and there are flashing lights there?
Stop now? No, not yet.
Yeah, we know those
Not
drivers
yet.
can't do more than one thing at once. They,
For the next grant.
Not yet.
You know, I guess as long as I've been here, I've never known that we've had safety belt or impaired driving zones. And I've never known the sheriff's department to have an area within the county where other states have done this, for example, the state of Florida, where they've actually, you know, as cars are coming down a particular road, they pull them into a shopping mall area, and everybody gets checked for seatbelts, everybody gets checked for a breathalyzer.
No.
And I'm like, you know, that you know, to me, that's not right. But
That is not
is
what
that
we-
what you're doing with
that
this
is not
stuff?
what we're doing. The alcohol enforcement is a mobile enforcement zone. The zone being, we have to tell the state of Michigan, based on what our data shows us, this is where the alcohol-related crashes and arrests are. We
Yeah.
designate our zones, Garfield Township, Hammond to South Airport, or Hammond, we say we're going to enforce in this area. The officers still have to have a reason for a stop, a legitimate
Okay.
traffic
How
enforcement.
So you're not
have we
pulling
been
them over
doing
to...
these?
We've been doing them since 2004.
Okay, so you're not
2003,
pulling
with OHSP.
you're just not
No.
taking a whole line of cars and pulling them into
This
a
isn't
shopping
a check
mall.
lane kind of thing.
All right,
No.
okay.
No.
Because I thought, with the description Commissioner Gilman gave me, I
The
thought that
seatbelt
was-
zones are different. They actually, as the sheriff described it, there is a designated zone, there's a sign, a fully marked patrol car with the lights flashing, and then other cars in a line, and as soon as they observe somebody not wearing their seatbelt or another traffic infraction, they stop the vehicle.
So this is that.
You're pulling them into a separate lot to do
You're not
this?
pulling them over.
We'll pull them over if they are not wearing a seatbelt. We don't pull
How do
over
you,
every car.
how do you know if they're wearing a
You
seatbelt?
watch.
Oh, you have a spotter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a spotter, and then he calls out the car to the guy down the street, says it's the
Yeah.
How can you
red
see if you don't
56
have a-
Buick.
How
You know,
can you see if you have a
slow
seatbelt
down.
on?
The other evening at, on Garfield at Hammond, there was an officer, a sheriff's car with the lights flashing, parked over the curb on the side, on the southeast corner. And there was a couple state police cars and a couple more sheriff's cars, and I presume it was some kind of a sting, maybe a seatbelt sting, but I've participated in a lot of traffic stings, but that one, to me, if that's how you're gonna do the seatbelt, I'd be a little concerned, because that's a pretty busy intersection, and it was really distracting. You know, you could see people looking, and I fully expected to see a crash. I just had never seen that before, and, you know, they were busy going up and down Hammond and Garfield, chasing cars and pulling them over, but
We do.
but in response, Jason, to a grant and the enforcement of the alcohol laws, that's very important, because that car coming down the road, and of course the officers are trained, they pull them over, and the officers are out there, they're extra people, if you will. And you'd be surprised how many people they take off the highway that have been drinking.
Rob?
I agree with the impaired driver enforcement. You know, an impaired driver took the life of a childhood friend, took the life of my cousin. You know, I support that 100%. But, you know, when I'm driving down the road and, you know, there's somebody peering into my car to make sure I'm wearing my safety belt, it doesn't make me feel safe. It makes me feel kind of like Big Brother is watching and keeping the thumb down on me. And that's the feeling I get as a citizen. So I really question what we're going for here. I mean, what do you want people to feel? What do you want people to do? To just feel scared of the police? I don't think people should be scared of the government. The government should be scared of their people.
We certainly can't argue with that sentiment. We just operate within what the statutes allow us to operate within, and we'll do responsible policing with anything that the state of Michigan says we can do to ensure the safety of the people, even against their wishes in some instances. We're not going to ignore somebody driving 90 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone because they're doing it safely. That's not how law enforcement works, unfortunately. So we have that burden to bear.
Jason?
Yeah, frankly, I don't doubt the ability of our sheriff's department to be operating, frankly, in any other mode but in one of excellence. Okay? And my concern, of course, is just, you know, as things go, that, first of all, the seatbelt enforcement issue is one where right now you can pull over anybody and say it was a seatbelt. I mean, you know, that's the way you pull somebody over now. If all else fails, you know, I mean, as far as Fourth Amendment rights, it's a seatbelt. The other part, as far as Commissioner Fleece, you know, yes, I mean, as far as the impaired driving and a concern about that, and frankly, I wish they wouldn't bundle it because I think I see them as two separate things. But the other part is I think that our Sheriff's Department is good enough and qualified enough that they don't have to necessarily have a checkpoint to be able to do their job. And I don't think that this particular program is, well, I think it's not good for the community ultimately. I think it's disruptive, and I disagree with it.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the application of the Office of Highway Safety grant as outlined. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Limcool?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Gilman?
No.
Fleece?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Maxbauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
I saw Nate writing during the discussion, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be outside your neighborhood.
He just wrote down all the commissioners' addresses. They're going to have scopes on us when we pull out of our subdivision.
Hey, it's fine with me.
There's
I'm
only
on
two to worry
bicycle.
about. All right, if we can get this, you know, we've been here since 3 o'clock, so it's been a long day already. So let's get this back. Township contracts for community policing officers. Nate, are you handling this, or is the sheriff handling it?
I'll start. Some time ago, many of these contracts with the townships are very old. They haven't been updated, they haven't been looked at. I think the last signature was 1994 on one of them or something like that. And they've just been kind of plugging along, so we thought we'd dust them off, take a look at them. And basically, the language is fine. It's the same, and it's been that way for a long time. What it comes down to is the cost to the township and the cost to the county. And Mr. Loya suggested that we come to the board and explain the program and the county's cost. In the letter that you received, I hope you all got that, we tried to make this as simple as possible. And in determining the county's cost for each officer, Mr. Clatter's here. I spoke with him earlier in the day. He has one township officer that he pays the salary and fringe benefits and some overtime for, and the county picks up the remaining costs. And what are those remaining costs, first of all? Well, we tried to detail this as best we can, and I'm going to skip around just a little bit. If you look at the page 2 there, you've got 4 separate costs. The first one I want to address is the vehicle and equipment. The county in the contracts has agreed to purchase a vehicle, equip the vehicle, and for that officer. The estimated cost of that is $30,000. That vehicle doesn't get replaced every year. So we used a 6-year life of that equipment, vehicle and the equipment that's in it, and we came up with a $5,000 cost per year over 6 years, is $30,000. The cost is $5,000 a year. So it's kind of like you're amortizing the value of that equipment over 6 years, so it's $5,000 a year. After the 6th year, the vehicle would be replaced, the equipment would be replaced. Second of all, there are other things that are costs for each individual officer. And the way we tried to address that is we took the patrol budget line items, excluding the personnel costs, okay? And we figured out how much does it cost to run that department. We then divided that by the number of people in that department and came up with $9,545. So for each officer, and that includes, and I have the line item, the budget here, but that includes office supplies, photo supplies, data processing supplies, fax machine, printing and binding, copy machine, postage, safety equipment, other supplies, officer equipment, canine supplies, the reserve unit, community policing supplies, uniforms and accessories, clothing allowance, uniform maintenance, small tools and supplies, gas, oil, grease, vehicle operating supplies, and so on, for the whole law enforcement or patrol division. So that's where we came up with that particular figure for each officer. The third is the overtime. The townships pay $1,000 in overtime for the officers, but there's more to that expense, and the county picks that up. There's also, on average, the officers earn and use compensatory time where they get paid off, and we figured that's about 40 hours per officer per year. So the county's cost for the overtime and paying them for using the comp time is $2,155. That's all. Those those 3 items are in the patrol budget. The air cards, if you recall, when we went to the air cards, we agreed to pay for those from the seizure fund for the first 3 years, and then roll that cost into the county's budget. So for each air card, for each MDT, it's $40 a month, times 12 months is $480. That's not in patrol budget, that's coming from someplace else, but it's a county cost. So if you can either leave that in there or take that amount out if you want. The total is $17,180. So for that township police officer in Acme Township, that's what it costs the county. Any questions?
Jason?
Sheriff, the seizure fund has limited use, right? I mean,
Yes.
there are only certain things that you can do with that.
Correct.
Can that still be used? I mean, is there sufficient monies left in the seizure fund to continue financing the cards so that we're not taking out a general fund?
Well, sure, but we said, let's do this for 3 years, okay, out of the seizure fund. We could use up the balance in the seizure fund doing that, okay? We don't want to do that, but it's...
The idea, of course, using it down for something that it is usable for, and then we can make up for it at some point if necessary, you know, if you had other intentions. The idea being, get as much out of the way of the money that has encumbrances to it, and then go to the more fungible sources.
When we laid out our plan for spending that money, we had 3 years in there to pay for the air cards. We also had money in there to do some other things. We're about to close the books on our new building. And when that is done, the cost for that, when that's done, we'll have a balance in that seizure fund, okay? We have to, from that balance, take out the appropriate amount to pay for the air cards, okay? There will be a balance there. We are planning on purchasing a new dive van for the sheriff's office, okay? That's a big chunk of money, and that is one of the things that we
So that's
kind
one
of
of the
laid
other
out.
things you have planned for the
Pardon? Oh, yeah, we've got plans for it.
Yeah.
And it's, well, yeah, we could use some more, we could make some more plans, but, yeah, we do have plans for it. It's not like, we don't know what we're gonna do with all this money.
Sheriff,
Okay.
I thought though, isn't the general rule that we can't use that money to supplant anything that
Right.
we were already doing?
Right, but something new,
Right.
we can, and these are new.
So how can we use it for a dive van? Don't we have a dive van?
One, yes,
Then why can't we use
right,
it for new
we're
cars?
adding another one. By that, I mean, this one is old, not that we, the one we have
think I
is
got
small, okay?
You
We've
got it.
definitely,
Yes.
no, you didn't.
Light went on.
We've outgrown this one, okay?
Okay.
And what we want to do is, we're not going to get rid of this one. It's in good shape. Although 30 years old, the body's fine. Renovate the interior for something else. And there's a couple of different schools of thought on that.
But it can't supplant anything that you're already doing.
Correct.
That's the key use of the money.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we could do exactly what you're saying, you know, we could, this is something new, we could pay for it for a long time.
Just rather than have a balance sitting there of unusable, monies, especially when we're talking about digging into general fund and other resources are being limited at the same time.
No, there's no balance. Well, we're not counting on keeping a balance there. Matter of fact, we have to spend it over, now it's a 3-year period of time.
Right, that was the other part of it, is there is a time limit, right?
So I think what happened here is that, or what's going on is that Sheriff's absolutely right. He did a really good job of, he and Nate, of updating these contracts that were in various ages, okay, and some of them 20 years old almost. And so he wants to go now back to the townships and negotiate these.
yeah.
But every year, when Nate comes and brings the annual increase that we were applying to these contracts, commissioners would say, how did we arrive at this? Where are these numbers coming from? So we thought it was good, before he went out to the townships, that he came and explained to you kind of what your responsibility is under the arrangement that we have now, and what the township's responsibility. But I think, Sheriff, now you're going to go back and actually do some talking and negotiating with the townships. Is that correct?
Well, when this started a long time ago, and I don't know exactly when, the language stated that you will pay for a 3-year deputy. They needed to pick somebody at some level, in between the bottom and the top, and that's what it was picked. And it very simply says, if it's X this year, and that was so that when, maybe one township gets in this year and 5 years later another township gets in, there's a starting point, and they use that number as kind of a middle-of-the-road starting point. And then they said, once you start here, we're going to add 3% and 3% and 3% and 3% and 3% and 3% and 3%, okay? And that's what's been going on. And what we would like to do is to pick a number, and a fair number, not that we're trying to make millions off the townships or subsidize the township any more than, and I say subsidize, or participate at a greater expense than what we've shown you here, is that we'll pick a number, and if you want an officer, then here's what it costs you. Next year, we will look at our expenses, or the personnel expenses. Health insurance may go up, it may go down. Other expenses may go up or down. We will adjust that accordingly, and you pay for what that officer's actual personnel costs are.
Average personnel costs.
Right, right.
And I think it's a good plan. I think it'll work.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, the clarification question I had, because I talked with 3 township supervisors before coming into the meeting, and they were confused about they thought that they had, that you were asking for
the actual cost increase plus an additional 3% every for the next 3 years, and they were confused about that. And I just said, well, let's get back with the sheriff. It sounds like it should be just whatever the actual increase in the cost of the officers, and then that's billed annually. That was my suggestion, without knowing any more than I did, and having the opportunity to talk with you or Dennis. So, and that's why Wayne's here tonight, to get that clarified, I believe. But okay.
So I understand correctly, what we're basically doing is raising the rate effectively?
No.
No.
Actually, this could result in a slightly decreased rate for the townships in the first year. And that's because of the way we calculated it in the past. For example, the thing that really complicates this is you might have an officer that's in one of the townships who's on a DB plan, and the DB might cost $60,000. Well, we never charge them that. We just use the average 3-year deputy. But in one township, they might be a 1-year deputy that costs less. In another township, it might be a 6-year deputy. Oh. So what these guys are going to do, and I think it's really the right way to do it, they're going to come up with a number that approximates what an average deputy costs. But we're not going to charge the townships, or at least when the sheriff and I discussed, we're talking about doing the same thing with retirement that we're talking about doing in our budget. Charge everybody at a 9% cost, which is our defined contribution plan, and take the rest of that retirement for the DB employees and separate it out. That way the townships aren't being penalized to be charged for DB costs. Now, that means, in effect, the county will have to eat some of those defined benefit costs. But it'll be easier and fairer for the townships. They'll be able to easily see what their costs are going to be. And I think the sheriff's idea of coming up with that base cost and going to the townships and saying, let us explain what's in this. And if they can come to an agreement on that, and then you just simply from there go to whatever the increases or decreases are in all personnel-related line items for the average deputy, that's going to be really easy to explain. Right now what's happening is the township will come in and say, well, you gave a 1% raise last year, why'd you charge us 3%?
Right.
And, there are other, retirement might have gone up, but health insurance like this year went down. So, those things are not being accounted for. So the sheriff's plan, I think, to go in with actual cost increases that we can document, other than the timing issue, is going to be a little bit.
So how does this number $17,180 fit in? You're saying those are the costs that we're currently bearing that under the new contract would be included in the contract? That would get.
We'll continue to bear them.
Okay.
He wanted to show you that so that you could see what the county's commitment is per officer.
Right. And there needs to be an understanding as well that although the letters historically have said based on a 3-year deputy's pay plus $1,000 in overtime increase 3%, there's other non-personnel items that are increasing rapidly. Gas as an example, in and of itself, the cost of vehicles, the cost of ammunition, the cost, all of that. That is not recognized by the language in the contract. So it was our hope to find a number and say, now this is going to increase by a certain percentage annually determined by the Board of Commissioners. And that has been since 2002, 3%. Right. By agreement between Dean, Dennis, and I.
But now we're going to basically go to you and say, how much did gas go up? How much is bullets going up and ammunition?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not bullets.
Yeah, ammunition.
And then we're going to actual costs. He always straightens me out on that. And we're going to do actual costs, which I think is the fairest way for the townships. Might end up costing us a little bit more, but it's the fairest way for the townships, I think.
Before I have any comments, I'd like to hear what Wayne's got, if he's got any questions. It would be helpful for
Wayne,
me
you
and
can
my
come
questions.
up here if you want. If you want to sit here, that's fine.
Welcome to the board.
Yes. Oh, boy.
That way they can answer your questions.
We now have a 10-member board.
This is not portending anything. Thank you. I would like to make one comment before I talk about community policing officers. I remember a few years ago when the board used to come to Acme Township and hold meetings there once a year. And I invite you back again. It was a great thing for us to tell you about what's going on in Acme. And if you ever decide to do it again, we would welcome you. And if you remember, we provided you with coffee and great cookies.
That's true.
My name is Wayne Clatter. I'm a supervisor for Acme Township. And I would like to thank Larry Lidman for coming to our meeting last night, because that was the first time I had heard about this contract and it coming forward towards you tonight. And I would like to applaud the sheriff for taking the initiative to review this. We've looked at this contract for a number of years and seen the 3%, 3%, 3%. And in Acme Township, and I can only speak for Acme Township, our revenues have been going down and down and down. And we haven't had salary increases in a number of years, and our costs are going up and up and up. So when we saw this 3% increase automatically, we began to question, why isn't there some synergy? If we're going down, why shouldn't the sheriff's department also be going down? So with Sheriff Bensley's initiative, you're looking at that contract and trying to come up with my mind, from what I could have been able to discern within the last 12 hours, a better way and fairer way of looking at the contract. There are still some other concerns besides how that number is determined that you will share and our cost is. It hasn't been mentioned tonight, but your number is about $17,000 plus for each community policing officer. Our cost last year was $74,161. So it's a very costly thing for us to have, and a very valuable thing for us to have a community policing officer, and we want that relationship to go. We're supporting you, and you're supporting us, so thank you for doing that. I'm looking forward to meeting with Mr. Bensley and discussing this contract, and I sent it to the attorney today, and I'll take it to our board next month for discussion. I hope Mr. Bensley can be there, or somebody can be there to explain it to the board. We also have a few other issues we'd like to discuss. It says in there, and I lift it back with my chair, but, it says in there something about being able to help us enforce some of our ordinances and our needs. So we'd like to discuss what it is you can help us enforce in our ordinances and those kinds of things. We've also heard some of the board members and residents say, well, I saw Acme's policing officer over in another township. We understand that there are needs to send that policing officer over there. We also understand that for the majority of the time, they should be there. Is there a limit? Are they gone over there 20% of the time, 30% of the time? What is the average? So we need some questions and understanding from our point of view. And so again, I applaud the Sheriff's Office. I applaud the board for looking at this contract and coming up with a fair way of assessing both the township and your cost, and moving forward with this. So that was my comments, and I appreciate the fact that it's coming around for review at the townships. I didn't know that until just a few minutes ago. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, Wayne, I really appreciate your comments. I think it's one of the issues that becomes a communication tool as to what the value of community police officers for the townships are. I don't think sometimes we explain the value to the townships and their officials as to what the real value is for Grand Traverse County for them to provide that services for their people. That $74,000 is a pretty big nut, especially when you come to Garfield Township, and they're paying 13 for 13 officers, a detective and a lieutenant, along with 11 officers. So, and that's their decision. But, I think that when we start looking at the value that those townships provide to Grand Traverse County is huge, because that gives us a lot more density for officers to be able to police our communities. Garfield Township is almost 30 to 40% of all calls in Grand Traverse County. And that's a huge number, and they're more willing to pay for that. But I think but one of the concerns I have heard is making sure that we have the same officers assigned to each of the townships, that you don't take the brand-new officers and put them into the township, because that lowers the cost for the county, and the county picks up additional revenue, because it's not an equal thing. So, I know that Garfield at some time had expressed an interest and a desire to make sure that you get a mix of officers from different experiences and different lifespan, how much time they got on the job. So I think that's an issue, but also I think we need to not just look at, well, these are just numbers here, but I think we need to look at what's the value. What's the value for Grand Traverse County to have township people to have that kind of a program for them, and how is it going to be impactful for us, for all the people in our county?
Do you?
Go ahead.
Did you want to, Larry?
I have just a couple of comments. Number one, isn't the, in your deputy contracts and sergeant contracts, aren't there 4 levels?
Not, there's several steps in the deputy
For
contract.
the steps, yeah, for the monetary steps.
It's not
6.
4, it's 6.
6.
6?
Not for the
Start
sergeants.
6 months, well, the deputies, I believe, are start 6 months, 1 year, 2, 3, and 4 years, which would be 6.
So, in reality, and to save a lot of extraneous work, 3 years is a pretty good, what you've been doing. A 3-year deputy is a fairly reasonable figure, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2, and I think Wayne's correct on that, 74,000 the township pays. We're paying 17. What really bothers me is the townships that can't afford it. And I'll give you an example. Mayfield, they don't get a cop at all. They used to get a cop, and I talked to the sheriff about this, and I understand he wants to save overtime. But I don't think it's fair for the populace in the townships I represent not to be able to converse with the deputy at least once a month at their meetings, where Acme, who's getting a new Meyer, he can afford it, or Garfield, they've got 13, but poor old Mayfield doesn't get any. Paradise doesn't have any. Blair's got 1, and the village of Kingsley has the undersheriff because he lives there. So they're adequately covered, but...
That's your opinion.
But anyway, I really have a concern about that, and I think that the sheriff's department ought to be able to, and I worked enough years in the shifts and all of that, there's no way you'll ever convince me you couldn't assign a duty man, just like us commissioners, we have a schedule, you guys have a schedule, put it right on there, make sure the sergeant assigns that deputy to go down there and give the report. You know, and the townships understand that perhaps that deputy will be on a call and can't make the meeting. But the meetings generally are an hour to 2 hours long, so I wish that you two, the top administrators, particularly the sheriff with the responsibility, would really consider that, because I don't think that monetarily it's fair at all, and they pay taxes in Grand Traverse County too. Thank you.
Chris?
First of all, I want to, as long as Supervisor Clatter is here, I want to thank you and every other supervisor that funds these officers. Literally, Grand Traverse County's revenues are going down too, as you, if you were watching our earlier meeting, you heard. We can't do it alone. And I appreciate very much the fact that the townships participate in this program, and I wish more of them could or would. My next question is for Dean and Dennis. If the county is going to bear additional costs, is this built into next year's budget?
The budgets are built to cover all the costs associated with the whole operation of the sheriff's department. So based on my initial discussions with the sheriff, I don't think the number is going to change in any significant way. So I think we're covered.
Okay. And the next question I have is for the chairman. I have a budget question on another subject for the sheriff. I won't ask it during this particular discussion, but if it's okay, could I ask it to him the question after we get done with this vote? It's basically a yes or no answer. Or I could ask him to come back tomorrow night.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
We can ask him. Rob?
Question for the sheriff. Wayne had talked about enforcing local ordinances in townships. What kind of support are we currently providing with that regard, and what might we be able to provide?
Well, I got a call a week ago from Mr. Manigold about their enforcing their parks ordinance. Their parks ordinance. They have a parks ordinance, and it's a township parks ordinance. And as it stands, we aren't able to enforce at this point their ordinance, parks ordinance, okay? If we entered into some kind of an agreement to do that, that would be possible. I've checked with Mr. Cooney yet, but we have that for the noise and junk ordinance, okay? I suggested to him that, well, Garfield has some parks, and they probably have some ordinances, and East Bay and Acme. It would probably be a good idea to make some contacts with those townships also and do the same thing, so that our officers would not have a parks contract with just, or an agreement that we would enforce our ordinance with Peninsula Township, but also East Bay, Acme, Garfield, all the townships where they have those ordinances. So that's just kind of in the beginning stages of trying to figure out. They have a problem. They have a large area at the end of the peninsula that is vacant, and they have people driving down the roads and building campfires and stuff like that. And so they'd like some enforcement of that. They don't have anybody in the township, that's, at least that's my understanding, that they don't have anybody at the township doing that enforcement. They would kind of like us to do that. So we're talking about that, and I said, well, let's kind of expand that. Is there somebody else? I also suggested to them that maybe they get a hold of all the other townships and collectively fund a parks enforcement officer or something like that. Then they could go to Whitewater Township Park, or they could go to Grace McDonald Park, or out on East Silver Lake Road, or the end of the peninsula, something along that line, and enforce those ordinances. I don't think there's going to be an issue in the winter, typically in the summer. So would that be a seasonal position? Don't know, but we're starting to look down that road.
So currently, if I go to a county park after dark, a cop can come and tell me, get out, we're closed.
No.
No?
They can tell you that, but
Well,
there has to be, yeah, that can happen, but without the support of our prosecuting attorney's office, our enforcement authority and local ordinance is limited. Unless he sits back where the magistrate says, I'm going to recognize citations you issue under these ordinances, that has to happen first before we start writing people tickets for fires and things of that nature. So these things have to be cleared through the prosecuting attorney's office before we do it.
Okay.
No, I can't help but back up just a little bit.
He just said county park.
No, county park, we'll write you tickets all day in a county park.
Yes, county park.
So you do enforce county parks,
Has to be recognized by the prosecuting attorney's office.
but in a township park, there's no, the police department doesn't enforce that.
We don't enforce that.
Okay.
Well, but we kind of need to back up a little bit when we, you mentioned the fact that you do the township's noise and junk ordinances. Up until Prosecutor Schneider decided that the county could not have a junk and noise ordinance, we had a county-wide ordinance, and it was his determination that the county did not have authority. Therefore, he drafted, and each of the individual townships adopted a township noise and junk ordinance. That's how the sheriff's department got in the noise and junk business in the first place. But township ordinances, and Nate's exactly right, township ordinances can be enforced by any designated enforcement officer. And the township has the ability by which to designate the sheriff's department as their enforcement officer. Problem being is then they have to get the prosecutor to agree to be the prosecuting agent. And if he doesn't, then the township has to take them to civil court. And the sheriff is not going to go into civil court and enforce an ordinance. So that's the glitch that happens with this. So that's how that process gets messed up when the sheriff tries to enforce township ordinances, unless it is the agreement with the prosecutor to in fact enforce those ordinances, or handle prosecution of those ordinances. I guess the thing that I'd like to say the most, is about this is I appreciate the fact that you've looked at current costs, because I think we've taken that old 3-year officer times 3% way too long. For one thing, we don't have any 3-year officers. Our number of 3-year officers are pretty small anymore. You know, I would imagine, what's our average tenure now? Probably 10 years or better?
Getting close to that.
So when you take our total personnel costs and you add that together and you divide it by 52 officers, it's not a 3-year officer what our actual costs are anymore. You know, there was a time when that was true. When those COPS grants were originally drawn in, 87?
Oh, these latest ones were 95.
The latest ones were 92, 95. So, but the first ones came out, I think, in 86 or 87. And at that point, you know, the Sheriff's Department went out and hired officers to fill those positions because we didn't have them. And that's where the COPS grants came in, and that's where the community policing started. At that point, the federal grant paid 100%. And then it went to 50% the second year, or the third year, I think. It was 3 years, and then the fourth year, the county paid the whole thing. So I think it was 50% the second year, 25% the third year, and then the fourth year, the townships paid the whole thing. But that's how we got into the community policing business. And, you know, the fact is that these personnel costs are no longer the three-year officer. But because we've used that 3-year officer times 3%, times 3%, times 3%, we're probably not as far off as we think we are. But at least it's an opportunity to be able to document real numbers. Larry?
Sheriff and Undersheriff, what are you looking for us to do this evening? Is this just information only, or are you asking us for conceptually this looks okay and then move forward?
Ideally, what we were hoping to get from you tonight, this mechanism of billing with 3% is in error. It's been for a sake of ease and the sake of ease only historically. There may have been some legitimacy to it in 2002 or prior to that. But we would like to hear from the Board of Commissioners that it's okay for us to go forward with a mechanism of billing that you're comfortable with.
Okay.
What we would like to stay away from actual dollars or actual costs, because tracking the officers in and out of Garfield specifically is an issue. They have 3, what we determine, community police officers, and they have 8 officers that rotate through shifts. Those officers are officers A through Z. And it's difficult to track them. So we would like to have a figure identified and somehow increase that figure annually or decrease that figure annually, depending on a mechanism that the county is comfortable with.
Okay. We want to, there could be, depending on which officer is in a particular township. There are some officers that, the majority now are under the defined contribution retirement plan, where there's a big discrepancy, okay? There are some, however, that are under the defined benefit program. And the difference is huge. And what we don't want to do is to say, have the township saying, oh, I don't want him, he's an old guy, get rid of him, he costs too much. No.
Yeah, we got to figure
okay? And to track them, you know, maybe there's an officer in Acme Township, and then for half the year, and he gets paid X, and then somebody replaces him, and maybe that guy's close, but not quite the same amount. Well, how thin do we want to slice that piece of pie to say, oh, we got to recalculate this because this guy's making $326 less than the other one, so now we have to go back? No, we don't want to get into that. Some of the officers, the way they work, it's contractual, so our hands are tied at some point also by who gets to go where and how they bid their shifts and bid their positions.
So in short, what we are asking the board is there's language in this Contract that has been there since 1995 that stipulates the mechanism of billing. We want to remove that language from the contract, identify a figure, a cost of the officer on an average, and then
Adjusted annually.
That's what we are asking.
Chris?
Sheriff, you mentioned when asked about county parks enforcement, you said you could obviously enforce ordinances. You could ask, but you aren't going to get very far unless you have the prosecutor's support. What about parks, county parks that are in the city, i.e. the Civic Center. Obviously, if an officer sees a crime being committed, I don't think he's going to just call 911 and ask for a city police officer, although he may require backup, who knows? But in that case, perhaps he would. But what about the Civic Center that's inside the city limits?
Any ordinance that we can enforce should be talked with through the prosecuting attorney's office prior to us taking any enforcement action in terms of a citation. The problem is once law enforcement inserts themselves into a circumstance without authority, and that situation goes bad, you folks are going to have a problem. And that's going to be a lawsuit.
Well, I'm saying,
No, we don't have any issues with enforcing the township ordinance in the township park. It doesn't say if it's in the city, we don't go there.
That's not, I didn't get that question. Can we enforce county ordinance at the Civic Center? Sure we can, as long as the prosecutor says we'll support your citations. Coincidentally, I've spoken with Jason Jones about having a county ordinance enforcement officer or having our department enforce those, and those are preliminary discussions at best, but we are talking about that. But the prosecuting attorney's office has not been involved in those discussions as of yet.
Larry?
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the sheriff to negotiate with the townships and bring the board back a proposed contract with some figures.
Support.
Okay. Motion by Fleece, supported by Inman. Further discussion? Herb?
Yeah, I have not had a chance to talk this by the Township Board of Garfield Township, so, I would really like us to be able to present this to have an opportunity to present it to the township boards before we start voting on anything.
Well, this is just to have them go forward and
Yeah, I know,
negotiate with them.
and I like the way he worded the
they're just
motion. So, I thought you were going to make a motion to approve it, but
No.
I like that you
No.
said that we go forward and do it. But
Allow
I think it's
them
really
to-
important that we bring it to the township boards so that they are well aware of what's going to happen in the future, so we know what's going on. So they are not blindsided like, Wayne was or some of the other people. I appreciate you, Larry, haven't gotten to them, but I'm sure Chris and I have not had a chance to talk to Chuck or the board, so, I really want the opportunity to be able to have that, to be able to do that.
I've talked with Mr. Korn several times. He knows exactly what's going
Good.
on.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that, so that's fine.
He knows, he
Good.
had some cost issues. I gave him, when we came up with this idea to set a figure adjusted annually, he's aware of that.
Perfect. Okay,
Yep.
so I have not had the discussion with him.
Jason?
Just to add to that, I mean, with 13 deputies, he's going to average out about the same anyway, one way or the other. So for him, it shouldn't really be any different than what he's been paying already.
No, I at least from my perspective, I certainly appreciate the actions and the efforts, but I would like to see a contract with numbers in it, before we approve the contract. Okay. We have a motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
Just one other point. There are, excluding a lieutenant and a detective in Garfield Township, there are 17 deputies paid for by the townships. There are 24 deputies paid for by the county. So that's the split. The township support 17 deputies, the county 24. Now, there are sergeants who supervise, they supervise both. So that's kind of the split. That's the township's contribution to law enforcement in the county.
Good information. Thank you.
Well, and it's a great partnership. It's been very good for our community, from both sides, from the township perspective and from the county's perspective. It's been good. All right. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thanks for coming.
my question?
Yes.
Chris had a question.
Sheriff, we have jail crews that go out and do work for the county, but also for other organizations. Have you had the discussion of, I know we used to get charged for using Camp Pugsley crews at the county. Have you had the discussion whether or not you can charge or will charge for these jail crews that go out?
Well, our thought is this, is that if we, and I don't have any idea what the Pugsley Cruise charges were. I think for the county for a year was
$10
$30,000 or something like that. They charge the county for those crews. I think that if we, for example, if the road commission, if we said, okay, it's going to cost you $100 a week for this person, they're going to say, we don't want them. Okay? And at what rate would we charge? Don't know. Do other counties do this? Don't know. But, yeah, we have thought about that. Our thought, though, is that nobody's going to want them. Goodwill, they're not going to want to pay.
No.
Okay? The Women's Resource Center, they're not going to want to pay. I can't tell you the other nonprofits that are out there that, well, they're all nonprofits, but non-governmental associated locations. I'm not sure. I know Goodwill, Women's Resource Center has had them. They've been at the...
Father Fred's.
Pardon?
Father
Fred's, Habitat for Humanity, and I'm guessing those people, we present them with the bill and they say, no, we can't afford it. This is nonprofit, and
The restore.
so it's more of a goodwill gesture on our part.
The source of
Doesn't that also make your job easier for control of the people inside the jail if they get out periodically and do some of these projects?
It can be used as a behavioral management tool. These people are, the inmates that are released for those purposes are, their minimum security, they have light and, violations, if you can consider that. The source of missed revenue here, though, Commissioner, is that we do not charge them for their stay. I don't know if you remember, we looked at this prison industries a couple of years ago, and I believe there is legislation dealing with this. I can't remember what it said in terms of charging for inmate labor. I don't know what that is. But there is legislation, I believe, dealing with inmate industry. The missed revenue that we are not seeing is we don't charge these inmates for their stay. The $35 a day bed charge is not there because they would not go out of the facility if they knew they were going to pay any portion of that bed fee. Now, we've talked about that internally, about should we charge them their rate, and we don't, because they won't go out. That's the fear.
Well, and that's an interesting, and I was quite involved with that whole jail industry discussion. It was about 2.5, 3 years ago, and we had some very knowledgeable people come in and talked about how it worked, where you actually take jail inmates and you have an industry. Say you're boxing widgets to ship, and you just sit there and that's what they do all day long is they box the widgets and put them on pallets and they ship them, But we could not identify anything in our community that was going to be that simple. And the other problem that we had is when we looked at it real seriously was whether or not we would have a consistent labor force to be able to commit to a contract. And unless you had a consistent labor force that you could commit to a contract to complete a regular routine project, you couldn't do it. And we just, because of our jail population being a little bit flexible and also who's in our jail, we just didn't feel that we had the opportunity to commit. At least that's the way I remember.
That is correct.
Right, Nate?
That's correct.
We just didn't feel that we could commit, even 5 or 6 jobs that we knew we could fill that job every day. So we didn't do it.
The number of qualified inmates is getting less and less.
Well, I appreciate being able to ask the question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything else for the sheriff?
Nope.
Or Under Sheriff Fuller here?
Thanks for coming.
Have a good evening.
Guys have a nice ride.
We have a nice ride.
They get to go
Code
home.
3.
They get to go home. We're sitting here
Yeah,
tomorrow.
wear your seatbelt.
We're watching.
Yes.
You're in uniform, wear your seatbelt.
Take me with you.
Our next order of
Don't
business
come
is
near
the planning
Crockett Road.
director in
been
regard
a
to
long
the position statement in regard to the underground injection well.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
That's quick. We have a motion by Inman, supported by Thomas. Should we hear from John before we vote?
No.
John, do you want to add anything to the letter of statement and position that's written in our packet?
I really don't have anything to add.
Larry?
I would like to thank John for the work he put into
Yeah, he
this.
did. It's well done.
It's well done, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Dick?
that's all I was gonna say, because I come in, I'd forgotten that we passed one a year ago, April. But this is much stronger and much better worded, and it does the job. I will say, those people up there, they couldn't find a worse place to put a well if they looked all over the state. Because it goes into 3 watersheds, and to me, it would be a disaster to put it up there, so I want to thank John. Dean worked on it too a little bit, I understand.
No, John
John did it all? Okay, John,
No,
thank you.
John deserves all the credit.
Well, and I think it's important to note that when the EPA holds their hearing in Mayfield Township next week, Dean will be there representing this, and I don't know if John's going to be available to go too or not.
Can we,
Commissioner Fleece is also attending.
I'll be there.
Mr.
And if it
Chairman?
looks like we're going to have a quorum without me, I'll be up there, but the big
Dean-
thing is,
Yes, Mr.
one of
Chairman?
us has got to take this up, or send it to him, or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, in lieu of that discussion, would the board, or would the committee allow the chairman to sign it and ratify it now? And that way he can present it as a
You'll sign it now and
signature.
ratify it at the end of the
Please.
month.
Sure, otherwise it's
Okay.
no good.
Yes.
So the motion that we have is to approve and authorize the chairman's signature on this position letter opposing the underground injection well in Mayfield Township.
That's right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay.
John, were you planning on being there or not next week?
Well, no, I'm not. I mean, I have an item on the RMA next week.
Okay, and
but-
Dean will not be there either, because Dean will be doing this meeting with the county board. So.
Because Dennis is gone.
I'm gone, so we need to decide, or I just want to make sure somebody will be there.
I'll be there.
I think Dick
Okay.
and Larry.
He'll be there, and maybe
And you'll
I
be
will.
there. Okay, great.
So we're set.
Good to see without deep feelings on the subject.
Thank you, John.
I have a question.
And everything, so you have.
Yeah, 'cause we
Couldn't we just change the time of our meeting next week?
Midnight?
No.
Morning.
You have an official one ready?
Let's talk about that a little bit, maybe we can do that.
All right.
Have Katie call
Next
me.
order of business is Veterans Affairs.
Hey Chuck, how are you?
Chuck?
How about those Tigers, huh?
We don't know anything about them, we're stuck in a meeting.
Yeah, it was to get you. Well,
Thank you for
I got
sharing
to
that.
the highlights while I were going.
Good evening. I
Verlander
do
died
have,
when the siren roared, somebody got
saved it. I do have an action item before you tonight. We have run into a few difficulties with our county Veterans Emergency Assistance Program. We've exceeded our funding for the year. We exceeded it in August, about mid-August or so. And the request before you is for a supplement to that program.
I recommend that you approve this and that you take it from your county board contingency fund.
Okay.
Move for approval for $7,500 as an extra appropriation.
Support.
I have a motion by Richardson, supported by Fleece, to approve $7,500 from the Commissioner's contingency account to be added to the Veterans Affairs budget.
All right. I just wanted to hear the contingency account part.
I believe it's I think we have $75,000.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to be sure that's where it was coming from, and I didn't hear that in the
I just wanted to
motion.
mention that when I restated them.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you for adding that.
From the contingency account, the Board of Commissioners.
You got that right. Contingency.
That's not the pizza account,
Is
is it?
there any further
No.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Thank you. We'll do
Thank
our
you.
best to get through the year on that.
Get it done.
Thanks for taking your evening with us.
Thank you.
The next order of business would be the Health Department. First, we have the mid-year presentation.
Now, this was supposed to have been in the file, okay? There was a bit of a fluke here. So I can go through these data if you want to. If you have a specific question, you go to a particular thing, or you go through the whole thing. I know you've had a long day, so I just wanted to offer that. Yes, you have a question, Commissioner Gilman?
I actually had one question. I note that we're, if I can find the page that I made the notes on. I noticed that the communicable diseases report reflects in nearly all of the categories a reduction, except for one category, which is the HIV/AIDS category, which for 3 years, 2006, 2007, and 2008, we didn't have any. Now, these numbers, do they reflect actual new incidences, or do they reflect just activities, including, as you say on the bottom here, is that including counseling? I mean, is this?
No, these would be actual cases. The problems between 2005 and 2009 was a mystery to us too, as to why we had none. What happened is we used to get about $13,000 a year for doing testing and counseling for HIV, and that was cut to about $1,000, and most of it was to go through a consortium of other health departments. And those years we didn't get the reports on it. So the reports weren't coming to us. And after 2 or 3 years of no cases, and then we actually knew of some cases, we checked with the state, and then then suddenly we started getting reports in again. So that really should be an asterisk by those zeros, because there were cases in Grand Traverse County, but they weren't getting reported to us.
So it's not a dip and then all of a sudden a rise?
No,
although it does look like 2009.
We sure were encouraged there for a while, but no, unfortunately, we do seem to have a low but a continuous number of cases coming up per year.
It does look promising otherwise. It looks like the numbers are coming down on the other STDs, and I just...
Yeah, overall, I mean, the story of HIV is unfortunately it's just become another chronic disease, and we had hoped back, maybe when I was first health officer in my mid-30s, getting into this, is we were going to try to stop this thing and not make it turn into another chronic disease, and that was just going to be like syphilis or other diseases, and it didn't happen.
And remember too, these are only 6-month numbers, so you need to really double them to do the comparison.
Well, no, I even doubling them though, I mean, the January to June numbers, so.
But overall.
Zero is still zero. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Fred, I'm noticing that the WIC participation is rising. How does that compare? How do these numbers compare to other years?
Well,
and I understand that WIC is only for a certain period of time, but I was just curious.
It's going continuously up. I didn't have a comparison by years, and that's part of it's because we had a software change from the state, and we don't have good historical data to compare apples to apples.
Okay.
But as you see from January to June on page 90, we see a step increase from 2,200 to almost 2,325. And if you flip to the next page, page 91, you'll see that infants participating is right now just under 600. When you figure we have around 900 to 950 births a year in Grand Traverse County, that means we got close to 70% of the newborns are on our WIC program. Now, when I came here, it was around 20-some% in 92. Now, we have done outreach activities to get more people signed up, but also as the economy has been impacted, more clients. And what really happens really typically is in the family unit is they have 2 incomes or 3, that is mom or dad has 1 or 2 jobs, and the other one, and then when mom is off on maternity leave, then their income drops by half or a third, and then they're eligible, and they continue it. But that just shows how fragile the economy is, and is for these families that have these children, is that it does impact on their...
I have a little bit more. This is, the county board does not have to fund it, technically, correct?
Right.
I personally think, I would never suggest that. I think we do have to fund this. My question is, do we have enough money in the budget seeing this trend for this program?
Well, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but WIC is primarily state funded.
Primarily state funded.
Right.
I think the question is, if we had more money, would we be able to serve more people?
That's it. Thank you for putting words in my mouth.
I think that we're.
I need that once in a while.
All the money you want to see.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We're
Jerry
gonna get you
Q,
on
Finance
Jeopardy.
Director for the Health Department. This program is essentially all federal funds that are passed down. Last fiscal year, towards the end of the year, we did receive an increased allocation of $30-some thousand in recognition of additional caseload that we were servicing. So whatever county funds go into this program are certainly less than the administrative and some other overhead costs that are allocated to the program. So it essentially,
I just want to make sure we have enough money in this
Right,
program.
right.
That's my goal
We
here.
have a very unique situation here, and I was at a conference recently discussing this, that no one knows of any other health department that's doing this, and is that Munson, in the collaboration with us, allows our dietitians to go on the floor and sign up women before they leave with their baby at Munson.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that, I mean, if you remember, to have people wearing a lab coat and walking up and down the floors, but it says Grand Traverse County Health Department, not Munson Hospital, and we're signing up people in the hospital. I don't know of any other health department that's doing it. There may be, but I don't know of any. And that's the kind of collaboration we've had. So that does push these numbers up. But the fact is the economy's rough. I think we're doing a really excellent job of outreaching as much as we can. And we're going to talk a little later with Sarah here about some of her outreach work that we've been doing to try to get these services to as many people as possible.
Jason?
So does this have anything to do then with the page 85? You got the adolescent health clinics, okay? The reproductive health number is alarming. 6 months, you're looking at over 500 for the year if you're on track with that. The mental health services is astronomical compared to the total of 2010. Is this something where, is there a reason for these numbers? I mean,
One of the things is it happens in 2011 is the Kingsley Clinic is going full board now, so
so it's grown.
We've got another clinic going, so
a second clinic,
and that's right. But it's true again. Is that when we switched mental health services to third level, which was the contract we disapproved, is that we found that going with Pine Rest, there's nothing wrong with Pine Rest, but therefore more chronic mental health issues, and where we found that our clients are more episodic. That is, they've got a crisis today. They had a big fight with their parents. Their boyfriend just left them, and they're getting suicidal thoughts or thinking about taking drugs or whatever, that we found that third level was a more appropriate for most of our cases, and so we had a large growth in that.
But back to the reproductive health number, and then also the prenatal and postpartum number, being 6-month figures that are higher than, almost, well, I mean, there's, 50% higher for 6 months than it was for a whole year. Are we doing anything as far as promoting abstention? I mean, are we?
Absolutely. That's always part of the game plan. Unfortunately, is too often is the first time we encounter a client for this is there a pregnancy issue or an STI. And so this forbidden fruit's already been taken, and we're working on them. But certainly, we want that. We're required to have abstinence as part of our program, but certainly we want to encourage that.
Thank you. Don't come into the program.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking about it afterwards.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. In the future, how is the federal health care program going to affect some of these programs? Have any idea? I mean, I would think they're federal dollars, and if everybody has to have their own health care, then you won't have these kind of funds.
Well, I mean, I really honestly can't answer that real well, but I will tell you this, is that the whole thrust, and I think it's a bipartisan thrust, is that the adolescent clinics in particular and public health in general are seen to be major partners as that goes forward. I mean, right now, the issue is even with, if let's say, everybody has an insurance card of some sort, are there enough doctors to address that? And there aren't, particularly that'll take Medicaid. And so who does take Medicaid. I mean, we are the I can't say we are the largest when I consider all the nursing homes, but we are one of the largest Medicaid providers, but certainly for primary care, we're the largest provider for family planning and services and a variety of other programs. So I think that the whole thrust has been through American Public Health Association organization is that public health has a very strong role in this because we're usually the provider of last resort, and that just helps strengthen us to be able to adjust to that. Us and the community health clinic, that's Arlene Brennan's group, and of course, through our what do you call that? Intergovernmental transfer, I guess I think of that term, is that indirectly the county is helping fund that clinic also. And so that is part of the system.
Yeah, well, I know Community Mental Health was talking about that the other day, about they don't know where it's going to go, and how it's going to be affected, and how all the funding is going to be taking place once this is implemented in, 2014? So that's coming down the pike real fast at us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2012, it's all gone anyway.
Fred, the one question I had when I looked at the adolescent health clinic.
Yes.
We offered hearing and vision testing in 2010. We have 0 in 2011. We didn't have it in 2009. Is that a service we're no longer providing?
Out of that clinic, no.
Out of the adolescent clinic, we're not doing that, correct?
No.
I didn't, okay.
You're still going into the schools, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but at the adolescent clinic.
We're going through a change now, so we're losing a long-time hearing and vision coordinator retiring, and we're going to go through a process of recruiting and getting someone up and going again. So we'll probably see a dip in hearing and vision testing when we go through that transformation.
Question. Back to the WIC discussion. Has it gotten easier for people to qualify for WIC over the years? Might that account for the rise in people that are on the program?
Well, we've tried to make it easier as possible. They use a magnetic card. We used to have to print coupons, and people had to deal with coupons, and now it's on like a.
But I understand the income requirement is 150% of poverty level. Is that correct?
Roughly.
For WIC, has it always been at that level, or are they like lowering the bar so more people can get on the system?
I can't say that was. Yeah, I think it was lower, but I can't exactly say the number off the top of my head.
So I think getting people on the system for the sake of putting them on the system is the wrong way to go, but filling unmet needs is certainly a worthy cause.
Any other questions in regard to the presentation from Fred? Okay, let's move forward with the review of the fees.
All right, Tom Buss is going to come up here. We got a call from Record Eagle on a topic about restaurant inspection reports and them wanting to have access to those. Some counties in the state do this on their own volition. Some do it under a FOIA request. The question is that, and 2 years ago or so, I wrote a memo, is that I wanted to know if we could get a policy, or at least in my mind, a clear policy, about setting fees for FOIA requests. Now, sometimes a FOIA request is a very simple thing. Certain letter is one. But this one is in depth and it's complicated because we have, our reports are on an electronic format. And the software is owned by Sword Software, so it's a company that the reports go into. And maybe Tom can discuss the request they had and what was the ramifications.
Well, the Record Eagle request...
This is Tom Buss, Environmental Health Manager.
Record Eagle request was for data. They said since we have the Sword Solution software, they wanted to be able to pull data out of that software for reporting monthly for the Record Eagle on the restaurants. And I did some checking. I've talked with Brian McGilvery a few times. We've emailed back and forth a few times. I've also talked with a software provider and did find out that yes, there is software out there that there's 13 other counties in the state that tie into their system, Sword Solutions system, and the public can go in and get the information online. There is a cost involved with that, though, of $600 per year. And, you know, and they also said, well, if we're going to pull off information, do special reports and things like that, there's a cost to do it, you know, for the Record Eagle. But in doing that, in taking information off from our database, there's concerns with the information not being protected once we release it. You know, we have control through Sword Solutions through their program that nobody can go on and interfere with that information. But once we release it, their concern is that it's no longer protected, and, you know, the information could be altered by whoever, you know, we would release that to. But there is an option out there through Sword for $600 a year, like 13 other counties do in the state, to provide that service where they could go online and get that information through Sword.
So for a transparency program, you're saying it'd cost us $600 a year, roughly?
We don't pay that right now, but if we decide that we want to have that online.
But having to make that available for public inspection would cost us about $600. Or each FOIA request the Record Eagle makes would cost them the cost of our time and effort and paperwork involved in producing the information.
We wouldn't be doing that, we would just be having this company do that.
Well, but the thing is, you are allowed and we are allowed to charge the appropriate actual cost of retrieving that information. And if it does come at a cost to us, we need to pass that cost along to the Freedom of Information requester, I would think.
That's the question, we're here. That's the crux of the thing, is that we would like to protect the integrity of the software. We want that if they want this information, we want to have the provider of the software to generate the report. And the question to you is should the county eat that $600 a year, or should the requester? And that's the question I'm going to do. And if we're going to do that for Record Eagle this time for this, what about other people with FOIA requests? Because we haven't been charging anything for anybody, and we get requests from attorneys wanting to know if there's been a food poisoning at such and such a restaurant, or we get people wanting to know this or that, and we haven't been charging. And sometimes, like I said, it's a few minute thing. Sometimes it's hours of an IT person going through records and trying to find that data.
Ross?
Is it just routine restaurant inspections that they want?
Yeah.
I mean, can you just print, the inspections are public record, right?
Right.
They're public record, but still, it takes staff time to print them off every month, and, you know, it's something we don't do currently, so we're going to have somebody assigned to do that.
Why, I mean, why can't you just print off the inspection reports, hand them to the Record Eagle, and tell them how much money it costs you to print them off? And if they want to collate the data or whatever, that's up to them.
I think that's it could be done, okay? That one of the things that they wanted is not all of the, because we're talking about pages long times, 40, 50 inspections a month, is they want to kind of editorialize or cut it down to just, what major infractions and minor infractions.
I know. I say this because in the town where I own a restaurant, the newspaper publishes a weekly report of inspections, My wife clips them out of the newspaper every week because we still get the newspaper from down there because we like to see what the competition is doing, quite frankly. But, I mean, it seems to me like the collation and assembly could be up to them.
Ross, I think
the information.
part of the equation is we laid off a third of the staff in environmental health. We just have one clerk, and there's just so much that one person can do. And so, it's really going to get down to the thing is that we want to do this in an automated way.
Okay, well, if you go back to letting them access the computer files, which is basically that's what the $600 is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that $600 for the whole year of access, or is that $600 per access E?
It's the whole year.
Whole year.
Okay.
Yeah, full year.
It's just right now you only have one.
Does the Record Eagle.
One.
Clerk.
I mean, one organization wanting access to this information.
Right.
Correct.
But if down the road, someone else wanted access to the information, the $600 fee has already been paid, right?
Correct. It's a one-time fee, and anybody can link into it by going to that software company.
Okay. So the only question is whether you charge the record eagle the full $600 or a portion of that or whatever, right?
I don't know how you do a portion of that, but that's the tough.
I don't
Because, I mean, it isn't a lot. I mean, in the big picture, it's just that when does that end? I mean, what if somebody else wants a monthly septic tank inspection reports issued or whatever? Is that this is turned into a cost for us, and we haven't been able to cover that.
I also did some figures too over the last 5 years, just in general, how many FOIA requests we process, and it averages out about 24 a year, and those can range anywhere from a couple hours to maybe 6 hours time. A lot of staff time to do that, so it's a lot of work to process those, but they do remain pretty constant number-wise.
Chris?
Why can't you, and there may be a reason, why can't you hire a part-time, temporary Kelly manpower person to come in and print these off, if they're public information?
Still have to charge.
Who's going to pay?
And, well, no, and charge the requester, whoever's requesting it. I mean, these requests come in, you say 24 times a year, twice a month.
Amongst other things, is that we got to be sure this is correct, because if it's published and somehow there's an error made, and restaurant ABC is reported, the reports that was really for XYZ, and their business drops
right
in half, there could be a big lawsuit. So I have to be really sure, and that's why I'd much rather go through the software. I mean, quite frankly, I'd much rather pay out of our own budget and be sure that we don't have a mess up like that than to have the minimum person doing that.
Okay, the next question I have is, so as I'm understanding you, your clerk is the person that you want doing this?
No, I would like to have the software company do this because they do this already.
And then it could be automatically published on our website. So in other words, we would then make this accessible to the public as opposed to the record eagle.
The other
Correct?
FOIA requests that you're getting are not all related to rescue.
Correct. We could use temporary if we had to and charge that.
And is there a way to, and who's handling these other types of FOIA requests now? Is it your present clerk?
No, generally it's me.
It's you.
I receive them.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Doesn't have anything.
I receive them, and, I review the information, and if I feel it has to go to the prosecutor's office for approval, I prepare, memo, send it to them explaining what it is with a packet. They review it, send it to me. I prepare another memo, send it out to the requester. It's pretty involved.
Okay.
But then here,
Let me interrupt. Dennis, why aren't we asking Tom to track his hours and charging for these requests?
You're only allowed to charge under FOIA the lowest rate of clerical staff in the office. That's all.
But we're not charging anything.
Yeah, I didn't know we weren't charging anything. We certainly should be charging.
Absolutely.
For those. Yep.
Well, we had one situation though where we had a FOIA and they wanted all electronic records on a particular topic.
Mm-hmm.
That meant an IT person spent I think nearly a whole day.
But we still should be charging something.
All of our backup records and all of our computers.
No, you're absolutely right.
But if that required an IT person, we can charge the cost for a minimum qualified person to establish that data.
That's correct.
But that's the question I'm coming to you is, the bigger question is, there hasn't been a clear policy in this county about charging for FOIA. And I think that, you could either say, Fred, come up with a fee, come back to us, or just say, come up with a fee that meets the law.
We have a fee policy.
There is not, departments do not consistently charge. In my office, if it's a small thing that comes in and it takes 10, 15 minutes, and someone from the public comes and asks for information, we collect it. We don't charge a FOIA charge for that. because it's a service to the community, it's something that's, public information, and, generally my rule is, if it's public information and it's not a lot of work, the public should have access to it,
Right.
one way or another, and so we give it to them. So we don't have a consistent policy. The sheriff charges for every FOIA request, okay, because he gets thousands a year. I did not realize we weren't charging here, but I don't think it needs to be a policy of the board. The law is the law. The lowest person who's qualified to do it, you calculate the amount of time, and you charge it. So I think we could do that. But I think the bigger question in this case is a question for you and your department. Is there a public purpose? Is there a public service that you would be providing to the citizens of the county by providing inspection sheet information or inspection review, restaurant review for the general public? To me, I think there's a public benefit to that. And in that case, if the board felt it was a public benefit, and this is a little unusual, I would say, pay the $600, put it on our website, and let the public know that it's there for them to see.
In that vein, and I'll tell you, my first instinct is, make the Record Eagle pay for their freedom of information. But the Record Eagle tends to be exclusionary. They control the information they parse through, and if it looks like we're hitting a restaurant in particular over another restaurant, and there might be a restaurant that's not included in a report that they publish, frankly, we avoid that by publishing it online.
That's where I agree with both of you. Max Bauer and Gilman, I've wrestled with this a lot in my mind, and I'm kind of, our heads are like in the same place, as I basically think we ought to just, if we're going to, since this has come up, just put it out there through Sword Solution, and then, because I don't want one restaurant, and I'm not saying any particular media, but someone to pick out, let's say there's and I'll make up a name, but there's a Jiffy hamburger chain that had an outbreak in New York State. And so one media decides to say, hey, there's 4 Jiffy places here. Let's start hitting on every inspection report and what they have, where there may be other chain restaurants that have worse inspections, but Jiffy gets pointed out because something happened in New York State. So I just rather, if we're going to do this, put it all out there.
I think we were looking for some input and insight from the board. What I'm hearing, I think it makes sense for us to just spend the money, put it out there for the public to have access to it, and then we'll work with you, Fred, to develop your rates for FOIA charge for those 24 other things you get a year.
Well, it's more than
I
that,
like
because
that.
he's talking about environmental health.
I mean, county, or your department-wide.
At least from my perspective, I would much rather have us spend the $600 and post all of the restaurant inspections that were done this month on our website. Because I'm fairly confident that the local written media will not publish every one of them and the results of those inspections every month. They're going to pick and choose who they want to report on. And if we put them all on the county's website, and the only question then becomes, if they pull off bits and pieces off from the website and choose to publish that, do we have any recourse from that? And I'm guessing probably not.
It's public information. Rob?
Mr. Aloya, where do you recommend we pay for this out of?
Fred will find the money.
Out of the health department's budget? Do we need a motion to that effect?
I don't think so,
Or
it's
just-
$600.
It's just that, sorry to take every time, it's just that we make a decision, I didn't want to be a surprise, why are they publishing this? And
All right, sounds good.
The rest of the FOIA requests you get that you now get money
Yes,
for will
I'd charge
probably
us.
make up that
Then that's fine.
$600.
Yeah, there you go.
That's fine,
That's a good
thank you.
point.
Thanks, Fred.
I'm sorry it took so long, but
Oh, no, I
you're
think
fine.
it's fine. Thank you, Fred.
okay, the next thing has an interaction, it was a review of some of our outreach activities, and here comes Sarah Ray, our outreach coordinator, health educator, and Sarah Ray Schimmick. She got married last month. I will do the first one a bit because this is a question that comes. The interaction of local medical community with the healthcare system. Actually, Dennis kind of said that there was a discussion about that when we were looking at evaluations of what we did in that. I want to quickly cover a few things that we do that you may not be aware of. Dr. Collins attends.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. I did ask for this, and that's because when the commissioners did their rankings, the health department ranked really high on everything with this exception. And I really told Fred, because Fred and I talk about this all the time, I think this is really more a result of the commission, of us not making the commissioners aware of the role he plays in regards to this, and that's why I asked him to do this. Thanks, Fred.
Dr. Collins, our medical director, attends and presents at the grand rounds. If you know what a grand round is, when the physicians get together on a regular basis and present cases, and they review those at the Munson Hospital, the local physicians. The health department provides immunization update classes to physicians' offices. That means in our little conference rooms, we actually have nurses and nurse practitioners from doctor's office come in, and we review the latest on immunizations techniques, the newest vaccines out, the newest rules from CDC on a regular basis. The health department alerts, sends mass faxes to physicians, clinics, pharmacies, and veterinarians, and I do that. When I get a health alert on my BlackBerry or at my office, and there is an E. coli outbreak, or there's a salmonellosis, or there's right now a novel flu strain in Pennsylvania at a county fair, and a number of people getting sick from a new line of flu. This is new news this week. I put together a health alert and fax them. Now, the reason we use faxes yet is doctors don't sit at a computer all day. They're doing rounds or seeing patients, so the nurse can, when I met with the physicians, that was the handiest thing. Then we realized that we have more than just physicians. We have pharmacies and veterinarians are part of the healthcare system. And so if it's a zoonotic disease, a disease that comes from animals, such as pigs, such as this novel flu line, veterinarians also get a fax from me that says health alert, and those go out through that system. We have a community health assessment and planning done jointly with the healthcare system, and actually Munson and us, we have a community health plan that we're working on. We just got data for our region on what is making people sick and what is making people die, and we're going to work on plans together. And that's really part of the healthcare reform thing. Every 3 years, the hospital has to do that in conjunction with the local health department. And we've already had one meeting where we reviewed data, and we have another one next week. We have a communicable disease investigation is done in conjunction with local infectious disease physicians. Those are Dr. Martin's group out of Munson. And when we have an outbreak, then we do that. And of course, that group is part of our smallpox response team also. And we do joint exercises are done with the emergency department of the hospital for mass casualties and epidemics. And there's actually a longer list on this, but I want to give you some ideas that we interact with, and that's really Kit Mikovits, myself, the communicable disease nurses, and Dr. Collins. So I mean, it's not in our normal reports on our data that this type of activity goes on. But it is a significant activity that goes on, and I wanted you to be sure you're aware of that. Now,
Fred, I think you also alluded to it earlier that you do go into the maternity ward and do the
WIC education. WIC and MIHP, infants, maternal infant support, and we can actually sign them up right there.
I think that's a huge one too, as part of this.
And then there's other, like I haven't discussed this, that is the whole medical examiner part is that I chair the Child Death Review Committee quarterly. All children who die under the age of 18 are reviewed, and I chair that meeting, and we have the medical examiner there. We have the police officer if it was a homicide or a suicide there. We have the protective service investigator if it was a protective services issue. We have a social worker that may have been working with that family, and we review those deaths with the notion of what happened that this child died and what could have been done to prevent that in the future. And that's part of the child death review. It's not a public meeting. It's not under FOIA. All records have to be destroyed at the end of the meeting. And the reason that is done is so that people can conjecture and discuss what needs to be done about this case and what could be done in the future to prevent childhood death. So when we have a drowning, when we have a child homicide, when we have a suicide of a teenager, those are discussed in a lot of detail. The meetings are fairly long to try to just find out what happened is that this child died.
All right, well, I just wanted to come in and highlight some of the efforts that I've taken over since coming to the county in January as far as outreach goes. Fred obviously just touched on the secondary outreach, and that being with the local health professionals, and more of what I've been focusing on is the actual direct client and potential client outreach, and how we're reaching them, how we're sharing information that's relevant for them, and helping the community in general stay on top of what we offer, our services and such. So first, looking at our general health department website, we had a total through, the present would have been at the end of July when I compiled this data, so that should say January 1st to present, and that would be 7,000 page views on a actual computer, an additional almost 7,000 on mobile devices. Those are counted separately, so almost 14,000 health department site hits. Out of all the county website content, so that's 794 either division or department pages. The county health department page was the 15th most viewed. You can see obviously out of the 15,000 search terms, users found Grand Traverse County Health Department was number 8, and the 16th was Traverse City Health Department. So we're at least in the top 20 of directing people to the county page using health department terminology. Interestingly enough, following on the discussion of providing information on restaurant inspections, we can see our top viewed page under the health department is environmental health, and a huge section of that was devoted to the public beach reports that are published twice weekly, sometimes more if there are any beaches that were above the level 1. So 19,000 views via the press release page. That doesn't fall under health department, but 900 out of 1,800 were clicking over to the public beach reports. Obviously, the general public is interested in reading reports on the well-being of various aspects of what we do at the health department. So second most viewed was the personal health. And from personal health, people were then clicking over to immunizations or the dental clinics north page. Third most viewed, animal control, and then finally WIC. Another aspect I've taken to in interacting with the media and sharing information is obviously social media. So first was our general health department Facebook page. The 32 likes that I record, those are individuals. That doesn't include other. For instance, 7 and 4 follows our page, Record Eagle follows our page, but they don't count as individual likes. So these are just individuals that are following our information. You can see 2,000 page views lifetime, so that would have been from, I believe, March was when we created the page. So March through the end of July, about 2,000 page views. We post at least once a day on there. Breastfeeding support, that's another program that we've implemented through the WIC program. We have 2 breastfeeding support counselors, peer women who are in the health department counseling WIC clients on breastfeeding, helping them continue that for the health of their infants. And they began their page in May, and so from May until the end of July, they had almost 13,000 page views. Very highly active demographic there. I highlighted some information there. Obviously, it's 97% women on the page, the male users, and these are, again, individual users, not group users. And it was actually the male was probably Fred checking out what the breastfeeding support group girls were posting that week. So I would disregard the 3.4
Fred's
male.
spending too much time on the breastfeeding page.
Well, he's got to make sure it's all current, up-to-date information that the health department backs up. Oftentimes, the girls will link to articles that are from other breastfeeding groups, so he wants to make sure they are they're aligned with our health department guidelines as far as breastfeeding goes. So another thing that we started this summer, unique for our county and new this year, was our Project Fresh Farm Market outreach. Previously, Project Fresh, if you're not familiar with it, it's a incentive program for WIC families. They get coupons to spend at the farmers market here in the county, usually the downtown Sarah Hardy Farmers Market. And what they had done in the past was 50 to 75 women would gather at MSU Extension and sit through a 3-hour class. And I came to Melissa and Fred and suggested trying to incorporate the Project Fresh with the actual farm market. Instead of having them go to MSU Extension and sit through a class, why not bring them down to the farm market where they can actually turn around from receiving their booklets and spend their coupons while they're there. And while we were there doing our Project Fresh distribution, we also did, I also did outreach for other programs. You can see this is through the end of July, excluding the 2 weeks I was gone for my honeymoon. So we've got the main programs that we did outreach for were breast and cervical, which is for our women over 40, family planning, the prescription cards, the dental clinics north, CHAP, and various environmental health services that I tracked throughout that month. And obviously there's more data to add to that since the end of July. So I think that is huge. Just the fact that getting 231 prescription cards out while sitting at the farmer's market, that was great, not just for the WIC clients, but for anybody coming by our health department stand. So you can see those numbers reflected when we, at the end of this, look at the prescription card from 2010 to 2011. But we also had an entire week dedicated to supporting families at the Cherry Festival with our baby tent, and we had great support from organizations, volunteering, Munson United Way, saw a couple commissioners down there as well. So we appreciate the volunteering, and obviously it was valuable because we served 502 total families. That doesn't mean a family didn't come back more than once, or a family, it could have been a woman with 6 or 7 kids if she's got nieces or nephews with them. So we only counted singular families, so 502 is not the number of people that came in and out of the tent, it's just the groups that came in. So did you have something for that?
No, did you have anything to say about the Market Master, what he said about Project Fresh, though?
We've had incredible response being at the farm market. Actually, somebody had been down there. I don't know if you've heard of the Double Up Bucks, the bridge card. Clients can use bridge card there. And somebody was asking one of the farmers about using the bridge card, and she credited the success of the bridge card to us being there and bringing the Project Fresh coupons, because every single WIC client who came and was getting her coupons, we then said to them, did you know you can also use your bridge card and you can double your money through there? So through the end of July, we had distributed about 260 coupon booklets, each one being worth $20. So our program alone put about $5,000 in the Sarah Hardy Downtown Farmers Market. So the Market Master absolutely insists that we've been coming as often as we can to continue getting our families our coupon booklets there. We do have some instances where the family comes into our clinic and we can't get them down. Either, they can't get travel arrangements made, or they have a work conflict, because they're there Wednesdays from 8 till noon. But so sometimes we do distribute the coupons in clinic, but for the most part, we've been doing them at the farmer's market, and everyone has been very, very supportive, and it's been mutually beneficial for everybody involved, I think. So finally, the last thing I wanted to highlight was our prescription discount card. Some highlights of that: in 2011, it's been used about 340 times by 184 users. The way the card works is that if I have one card and all 6 of my family members want to use it, we count as one user because we have a unique ID number. So 184 isn't necessarily individuals, it's just unique cards that are being used. About $12,000 were spent by users on prescriptions, about $37 per purchase, and the original value was just under $17,000. So we're saving them about 21% per purchase on their prescription costs in 2011. Some comparisons to 2010. We found not only were more purchases leading to lower prices in 2011, but also more pharmacies were offering their own unique discount programs when presented with the county card. So it not only are more pharmacies then saving their clients money, but more people are using the card, so they're saving themselves money. And you can see those differences between 2011 and 2010. The average cost in 2011 obviously is higher as well, but the difference in savings is higher in 2010. That's probably because less people were using the card and less pharmacies were offering a discount. The one thing that I show in this slide here, so the total cards being utilized went from 57 to 184 for half-year data. and total purchases made in 2010 was 116. For 2011, it's already been 340, and that was just through July. So the prescription discount card has been, I think, really excellent, and also a lot of people interested, especially once they've found out that it's not just for people who don't have prescription insurance, that anybody can use it. Some miscellaneous outreach activities that were beneficial in a large way to the health department included doing our dental outreach, working with Dental Clinics North to distribute brochures. The breast and cervical program, that's BCCCP, we distributed flyers in the community to encourage women to make an appointment and get in and encourage the show rates to be higher. The MIHP program beneficiary brochures, we distributed 500 between Munson, other governmental centers such as the library, and just getting information out for people who might not have ever heard of MIHP.
What does it stand for?
Maternal Infant Health Program. And then again, with the prescription cards, this was a suggestion that I believe came from the board, was to get all of the townships displays, and we did that. We got 500 cards between 10 new displays. Some of the townships already had current displays, so I made sure each township office has an updated display as well as FAQ posters in English and Spanish.
We had talked about sending them out with, I think, tax bills or something.
Yep, we just got those in. We've got what they are now is on a tear-off, so you tear the card off. What they are to come out with bills, which we were thinking water bills, utility bills of some sort. It's a lighter weight material, but you have to cut it yourself. But we have 1,000 of those to distribute now, so we'll work on getting those out.
Good.
Finally, doing the WIC program brochures, getting those to Michigan Land Use Institute. They were using those in conjunction with their marketing for the Double Up Bucks and the Bridge Card programs. And we also did a dental display at the Northwest Michigan Fair this year, and some other things that haven't been documented on there. We've been in attendance at obviously the farm market. We've done Camp 911 for the prescription cards. And I'm trying to think of what else I went to since creating this.
I can't think of anything wrong with it.
That's pretty good.
She's been busy.
Trying to stay busy. So I don't know if you have any further information you'd like, any clarification on any of the highlights that I provided you with, or any interest to know more in the future, specific areas.
Well, I think I guess I would credit the NACO drug card to Commissioner Inman, who brought that back for us, and I'm really excited to see it's being used in our community. And you know, it was an implementation that came from this board, and you know, I'm glad to see that the community is benefiting from it.
Right.
Very good.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sonny, I don't think that card would be anywhere as successful if it wasn't for her going out there pushing it.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Right.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris?
I'm having a senior moment. I know what I was going to say. It would behoove us all at our township board meetings to mention these on a regular basis, so that, especially at the
Do all the
ones that are-
townships have the discount card?
They do, they do.
Brochure packet? Okay.
Yep, I made sure when it was brought to my attention that some of the township offices did not, I made sure that each office has a display, a poster that we were provided with by NACO that explains the FAQs of the program, that they had the actual physical setup that holds the cards, and that there was somewhere available for anybody who might be working or was approached with questions. I went through and hand-typed most common questions and answers that I'd been getting. I wanted to make sure anybody sitting there that was approached by a township resident that was asked that question had that answer at their fingertips, so.
Yeah. What about the public libraries?
Yep.
Tuscola County did that, and it was real successful in that area.
We have them at the library. We also have some at the NMC library, at the Civic Center, at
Adolescent Center.
all government buildings for the most part have them there, yeah.
Yes, that's our report.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your
I can see you've had a
time.
lot of spare time, so.
Yeah.
Like all the rest of us.
She's married now, she's got lots of spare
That's right. I got nothing but time.
Okay, we have no unfinished business on the agenda. We have, under new business, we have the mental health court. You have a memo from Chairman Inman in front of you. Larry, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I received notification from Carol Stocking after our board meeting, and this is just one of those very, very, very rare occasions where apparently she received this request for the renewal of the mental health court pilot program continuation, and all it required was a check mark indicating that the authorizing officer agreed with the continuation request. So it's preliminary in nature. I did get a hold of Bob Cooney and asked him what his advice was, and he said the best thing to do would be to go ahead and have Carol mark that box and have it ratified, hopefully with our recommendation at the next meeting of the Committee of the Whole, which would be Public Health and Safety. And that, according to Carol, that once we get notified that they would be willing to extend the continuation, then we can again address it on a more formal basis and approve that acceptance at
Motion to approve.
at our deal. So I just need your ratification on that.
Yep.
Second.
I have a motion by Lim Cool to approve the application, second by Henschel. Further discussion? I would assume that when we receive this grant, we will actually see a budget for mental health court in our packet?
Yes.
Because we currently
Remember
do not have
that-
mental health court, doesn't have a budget.
Remember that what you see in your budget is general fund appropriations. When they're separate funds or they go to a different fund, you wouldn't see that if there were no general fund appropriations going to support the service.
We have a motion second. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Thank you.
This brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Seeing no public comment. We're back to seeing no public. We're back to Commissioner Committee reports. Chris?
The Commission on Aging Senior Center Outreach Program is going gangbusters. Green Lake is now talking about adding computers into their building, and they are embracing this program. And I wanted to let everybody know that the Senior Center has been contacted by Peninsula and Williamsburg to take their program out there. Honestly, the place to be is Kingsley and Interlochen at the moment. The other thing I wanted to let the county board know is that at the Commission on Aging Board meeting on Tuesday, the chairman of the Commission on Aging Board, it was requested by the board that he accompany the Commission on Aging director to our budget presentation. So you will be seeing him along with Georgia Durga at tomorrow evening's meeting. I'll get it out, it's been a long day. And the other thing I wanted to say is I would like us to address the possibility of moving up the time of next Wednesday's meeting. I know that, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Fleece want to attend that meeting. There may be other commissioners, and certainly I know Dean Bott at the last meeting spoke extremely eloquently, and I think he perhaps would like to attend that meeting as well. So could we possibly move up next Wednesday's meeting to a morning or afternoon?
Well, it would just take the vote of the board to do that, the Committee of the Whole.
Move we move it to 7 p.m. or 7 a.m.
Or we wouldn't do, we normally, when we met in the morning, it was 7:30, right?
Was it 7:30?
7:30.
Okay, 7:30.
I would make the motion that we move next week's meeting to 7:30 in the morning.
That would be the 14th Committee
Yeah.
of the Whole? And we just would have to verify that the room is available and we can get the televised program.
We don't care.
Okay, so that would be actually physical resources.
RMA.
The RMA meeting.
We could take another approach and just cancel the meeting.
Well,
Move it to the next,
have you haven't seen the agenda items yet?
Yeah, we got agenda
All right,
items.
by tomorrow you will have the agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to agenda review tomorrow morning.
So what I would ask is, can we review this issue tomorrow night when we're here anyway?
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
Because if Ross reviews the proposed agenda for RMA tomorrow and there's nothing significant that we need to deal on, maybe the simplest thing to do is to cancel next week's RMA meeting
Ways and Means.
Because.
You can take it to Ways and Means.
And then we can just take it to Ways and Means the following week if it's important.
I don't like the idea of keep shifting, moving, times around, and we've sort of got this thing of every Wednesday at 7 o'clock at night, and if we start scheduling morning meetings or whatever, it's, I think it's confusing to
But,
people
we
who
had,
are
a
trying to
couple
follow
months
us.
ago, there wasn't anything on the public health and safety
Right, we
meetings,
just
so I
canceled
just, made the decision to cancel it. Maybe reviewing.
Okay,
the-
I'll review that tomorrow morning with Dennis and report back at 6
No,
o'clock.
if there's nothing important, and, obviously, we're all going to be together a number of times over the next 2 weeks, so we always have the opportunity when we're here to make a decision if we need to anyway, because if it's a committee of the whole, we can always make a decision.
Draw our motion.
Do you have to withdraw your motion then?
Oh, certainly. Well, I didn't get a second for it, so
Okay.
I don't think I have to withdraw it, but
No.
I will.
Yeah, we'll just check it out tomorrow.
Any other commissioner announcements? Kurt?
Yeah, at last week's meeting, nobody mentioned the fact that the Veterans Memorial Park is having a dedication on the 18th. So that's at 1 p.m. It's a beautiful park, the way they put it together, and this is a formal dedication for that park, so, I
Sunday.
encourage people to show up for that, for the dedication. There's a lot of other programs that are going on throughout the week. Metro's 9/11 celebration and dedication of the artifact from the World Trade Center is going to be the 11th at 8:30, I
8:30 in
think.
the morning. And
8:30 in the morning, yeah.
next week.
So, I just wanted to make those comments, and also tomorrow is the Day of Caring, so they'll be kicking it off at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning in the open space, and a lot of projects will be out there being done, and we appreciate all the volunteers that people are doing, and the program, and the projects that they're going to be working on. Looks like it's going to be an absolute beautiful day. So the other thing is that I have made a donation to the Swing Shift with the Stars, the dance-off, which is a charity program for the Conservation District. And so if anybody else would be wanting to do that, they can get a hold of me. I have the cards right here, and they're all looking for donations to the Conservation District. So just to let everybody know. Thank you.
Larry?
Just a reminder, Blair's Family Fun Day is Saturday, the 10th, this coming Saturday.
Anyone-
Several of the commissioners have graciously
If anyone
volunteered
wants
to be
to
in the
throw
dunk tank.
rocks at me, I'm on at 1:40 in the afternoon.
But anyway, it's a great time for families to come out and at the Blair Park there on County Road 633 on Vance Road.
All right, notices and
Can't say I
announcements.
don't
We'll be
have
back here
sense of
tomorrow night at 6 o'clock from scheduled 6 to 9 for budget. We have the Circle of Friends Luncheon for the Child's Advocacy Center on the 15th at the Haggerty Center. And budget session scheduled the 21st and 22nd as needed. MAC conference is the 18th through the 20th at Grand Traverse Resort. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody at the same time, and Bonnie just picks one.